We have partnered with a world-renowned RF designer. They have looked at our network, they've looked at what's the most efficient placement and the best location for these towers. The design that we have is so solid.
Being able to place your network where you have designed your network means that the customer will have faster data. The customer will communicate better, which is ultimately what the goal should be.
We are ready. Turn us on.
Government's national health insurance consultant still unsure about the planned implementation date. The National Security Minister backtracks on murder rate claims. 4 arraigned for a major drug bust. Plus, Long Island MP Loretta Butler Turner slams the Christie administration. We've got those stories and more coming up tonight. I'm Dana Smith, and NV12 starts right now. News tonight with many unanswered questions surrounding the rollout of national health insurance. The government's foreign consultants for the new scheme are still a bit unsure on government's January 2016 implementation date. And while their team does more research, the health minister says at the moment, government just doesn't want the rollout of NHI to be like that of Obamacare. Kyle Joaquin reports.
We may be 6 months away from the implementation of national health insurance, but Sanigest International's chief consultant to the Ministry of Health says they're still making recommendations to the government. Now, as for that January 2016 implementation date, he says as it stands now, it's too soon to say whether that should be pushed back. Sanigest International's chief consultant to the Ministry of Health, Dr. Daniel Bronstein, says although the Bahamas is only a few months away from the implementation of national health insurance, there is still a lot of research to be done and advice to be given. So at this point now, Sanigest cannot say whether January 2016 is too early for NHI's full rollout. But for some portions, he said, it may be.
For some parts, and it would be, but exactly what is going to take place, we are working, and that's why we are here also, to work that out.
This may explain government's decision to spread NHI's rollout in phases. Sanigest International is a Costa Rican consultant company working in the Bahamas for the implementation of NHI. The firm previously said NHI would cost between $362 million on the low end and $633 million on the high end annually. The government has allocated $60 million for the implementation of NHI. Sanigest recommended a new tax to accompany NHI. However, Prime Minister Perry Christie has already announced that there will be no new tax to fund NHI at the initial rollout. Bronstein said the consultants are currently involved in a process that is far from easy but requires feasible solutions. He added that while there is a lot more work to be done, patience at this time must be key. And as for recommendations just months away, he says there are a lot more to be made.
We're working with a big team in those issues, and I think that we have to be patient and work hard just to have everything in place. There are a lot of recommendations that we are working with the team, the local team, and Sanigest, and all the stakeholders. So we are going to keep working on that.
Health Minister Dr. Perry Gomez said the government anticipates a smooth rollout, but still has a lot of kinks to iron out before NHI's implementation.
I mean, some have started already. All the improvements in our various clinics, longer hours to reduce the burden on the emergency room at the hospital, and so on and so on. All that is going to be taking place, not only here, but in some of the family islands, particularly Grand Bahama.
But one thing the government is really trying to avoid, he said, is NHI's rollout being like Obamacare's.
Yes, I anticipate that. And we're trying to take the precautions to make sure what happened to Obama didn't happen. He didn't hear my speech, man.
Obamacare's rollout was highly affected by a major glitch that made its website virtually non-functional. But as the nation prepares for universal health coverage, Gomez says more information will be revealed as time goes on. Reporting for NB12, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
National Security Minister Dr. Bernard Nottage is backtracking on a statement he made in Parliament yesterday about the murder rate. He said the murder rate at this time is lower than it was in 2011, but now he's saying something else. Paige McCartney reports.
Not only was Nottage wrong about the murder rate this year compared to 2011, with 68 murders already recorded so far this year, the country's set to break another record in 2015.
Just for the record, the murder rate today is no worse, in fact, less than it was in 2011, their last year in office. That's point number one. Point number two, serious crimes and not so serious crimes are all down, except, Mr. Speaker, for the number of murders.
That was Minister of National Security, Dr. Bernard Nottage, Wednesday in the House of Assembly, insisting that the murder rate now is lower than it was in 2011. He was responding to Montague Member of Parliament Richard Lightbourne, who claimed that the murder rate today is at its worst. However, after a story in Thursday's Nassau Guardian broke down the figures and showed the reality of the situation, Nottage changed his tune.
Yesterday, when I said that there were more murders in 2011, I was speaking about the whole year, 2011, as compared with the annual figures under the government, the present government, since we have been the government on this occasion. And I don't know whether I didn't express myself sufficiently for that to be understood, but that is what I meant. I did not mean that there were more murders in 2011 at this time of the year than there is now. And so I would like to correct that perception.
Up to June 10th, 2011, the murder count stood at 58. The murder count so far this year is 68. This means that the country's murder rate was 16.5 murders per 100,000 at this point in 2011, compared to 19.4 murders per 100,000 today. According to the United Nations, the international homicide standard that countries seek to be at or under is 5 per 100,000. A record 127 murders were recorded in 2011. On its current track, the murder count would be a record at the end of 2015. While Nottage today did not lay the blame on anyone in particular, he insinuated that the absence of reporters from the House of Assembly during the afternoon session might have had something to do with it.
I'm not sure whether when people are not in the House, whether they get the understanding of what you've said or whether I didn't express myself well enough. But I would like to indicate that I did not say, nor did I mean that all crime is better in 2011 than it was at this time.
During his contribution to the budget debate, Lightbourne questioned why government ministers seem to be so quiet about the crime problem when they regularly called for the resignation of former Minister of National Security Tommy Turnquest while in opposition. Nottage said if the opposition wants him fired, then all they need are more seats in the House of Assembly and he'd be fired. Reporting for MP12, I'm Paige McCartney.
4 people appeared in magistrate's court this morning facing multiple charges of drug possession after police carried out a major drug bust in North Andros over the weekend and found nearly 1 million pounds of marijuana on the back of a truck. Simone Davis has the details.
48-year-old Patrice Dorset, 45-year-old Reginald Martin, 51-year-old Eunice Gibson, and 19-year-old Eric Riley, all of Mastic Point, Andros, appeared before Magistrate Andrew Forbes today, charged with importation of dangerous drugs, possession of dangerous drugs with the intent to supply, and conspiracy to possession of dangerous drugs with the intent to supply. Dorset, Gibson, and Riley pleaded not guilty to all 4 counts, while Martin pleaded guilty to 3 counts and not guilty to 1. According to police reports, police acted on intelligence when they conducted a major land and sea operation in North Andros at around 3 a.m. on June 8th. The Drug Enforcement Unit, along with the Police Marine Support Services, Services and officers from the North Andros District performed a joint operation where they discovered a number of packages containing a large amount of marijuana on the rear of a truck. The prosecution said in court that police found Martin in a bush with 2 bags containing the drugs. They carried him to the truck where they discovered more bags. Both Martin and Gibson were taken into custody and brought to New Providence for questioning. Martin, who was represented by attorney Stanley Roll, pleaded not guilty to possession of dangerous drugs with the intent to supply. Gibson was further charged with assault with a deadly weapon and intentionally and unlawfully assaulting Corporal 112 Hannah and PC 3727 Mackey with a vehicle. He pleaded not guilty to that charge as well. Before the magistrate sentenced Martin, his attorney requested that the courts consider that Martin is a father and be lenient with his sentence because of his religious beliefs. Roll said his client is of the Rastafarian religion and it would be against his beliefs to cut his dreadlocks if he went to prison. Roll argued that Martin should not be given a long sentence because it wasn't a large amount of drugs and because he pleaded guilty and did not waste the court's time. Magistrate Forbes said he would consider those facts, but 988 pounds of marijuana is still a lot, and Martin is old enough to know right from wrong. However, given that he had no pending matters before the courts and remained crime-free up until now, Forbes was still lenient with his sentence. Martin was sentenced to 3 years in prison and remanded to the Bahamas Department of Corrections, along with the other 3 defendants who were given the option to apply for bail at the Supreme Court and, if granted, return to the Magistrates Court on September 10th. From the Magistrates Court for NB12, I'm Simone Davis.
The Christie administration is a government of make-believe and magical thinking that only gives propaganda instead of leadership and slogans instead of serious answers. That was the charge Long Island MP Loretta Butler Turner made in Parliament last night, where she took government to task for failing on several fronts and declared this administration the worst government in modern times.
As serious as our annual deficit is, there's an even more alarming deficit, and that is a deficit of leadership. Good, effective leadership. It is a deficit of leadership by the Prime Minister and his reckless and out-of-control government. This government is the most incapable, the most incompetent, and the most dysfunctional, and, might I add, delusional government since the advent of cabinet government in the Bahamas. This is the worst government in a modern Bahamian history.
Taking note of Prime Minister Perry Christie's recent comment that he's walking on eggshells regarding the nation's persistent crime rate, the Long Island MP said Christie needs to stop whining.
After 3 years in office, this government has not launched a major crime intervention program. Yet the Prime Minister gets up in front of an audience, including foreigners, and talks foolishness about how he is subjected to walking on eggshells while he wants the madness on our streets to stop. Could you imagine? That's what the Prime Minister said. What a spectacle. You know, we've got to stop this whining. From the top of our governance, we've got to stop this whining. We need a Prime Minister that's going to do something. If we can spend $9 million or more on the carnival, why haven't we already done more to create some more effective interventive crime strategies? Loretta's up today, 17.5%. We are being told that the country is getting stronger, it's getting safer, it's getting this. Mr. Speaker, how could we be having a stronger country when murder is up 17.5%, according to the Commissioner of Police?
Butler Turner also hit out at the Christie administration for the unemployment rate and dubbed the Prime Minister delusional for his remark that a surge of hires would come about as a result of Bahamar. The issue led to a heated back and forth with Tourism Minister Opie Wilchcombe, who was attempting to rise on a point of order, forcing the Speaker to briefly suspend the House.
March has come and gone, as has April and May, and we are now in June. Mr. Speaker, I do not have to yield to the Mr. Speaker, I do not have to yield.
The member states that he has a point of order. Member for West Grand Bahama. Member for West Grand Bahama. Just you yield.
Because I
No. I'm speaking to him. Yes, you do. if the member stands on a point of order.
It's not even identified.
The member has. The chair heard the member say point of order.
I haven't heard because I was talking. Remember, I have the floor.
No.
Butler Turner said once upon a time, in the world of make-believe, the PLP promised 10,000 jobs right away, mortgage relief, and national health insurance. But 3 years later, it has failed to meet its promises. She also called on government to reveal an accounting of traveling expenses and how much VAT revenue goes towards the deficit. She hit out at government for its failure to table the Auditor General's report on urban renewal and labeled the Stronger Bahamas initiative an advertisement for a mirage. Butler Turner said rather than leadership and answers, Bahamians are fed spin and propaganda.
Instead of substance, the PLP just keeps giving us more labels, more slogans, more excuses, more foolish talk and propaganda.